Hey guys, tonight we descend into shadows where every creak of floorboard might mean death, and every glance could be the last thing you see. You're barefoot on cold cobblestones, lungs tight, heart pounding, not from guilt, but the weight of pure adrenaline. There's no creed, no romantic code, just blood and coin dirt and silence. Forget the sleek, slow-motion elegance of movie assassins. You are not cloaked in mystery. You're wrapped in a lice-ridden cloak stolen off a corpse. And you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing who's joining these midnight journeys. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your name doesn't matter. You've changed it too many times. And if you're smart, you'll forget it anyway. Names can be tortured out of you after all. What matters is that you walk the streets of a town that doesn't want you ruled by lords who don't know you exist and who would have you hanged if they ever found out you did. It's the late Middle Ages. Disease creeps like fog through the countryside. War boils between noble houses, and famine is the default setting for half the continent. Most people are just trying to live to the next market day. But you're not most people. You live in the cracks right between God and the gallows. Your world smells like stale beer-tanned leather and wet stone. Your fingers are calloused. Your knees always ache. You're constantly cold even in the summer. It's not romantic. It's just survival. And when you're sent to kill, you do it because saying no isn't an option. Because that last job paid for your brother's bread. Because you owe someone. Or because there's simply no way back to a normal life after what you've done. The truth. There's nothing noble here. You kill for coin, for favors, for debts that must be erased in blood. Sometimes you don't even know the reason behind a name. You get a rough sketch, maybe a lock of hair and a deadline. Sometimes it's scrawled on parchment. Sometimes whispered from a cowl in a tavern's shadow. And once memorably, a message was tied to the leg of a chicken. Don't ask. You don't have training. Not the way knights or monks do. No one lectures you on ethics or technique. You learn because the first time you stabbed too high and hit a rib, the target screamed. The second time you went lower. That time he just crumpled. That's how you learn, through screaming, scrambling, and hoping. Your weapon's whatever's within reach. A stonemason's chisel, a shepherd's crook, a hairpin dipped in nightshade, assuming you can afford it, and sometimes just your hands. One time, you used the jagged base of a broken tankard. It was not graceful. It was not quick, but it worked, sort of. Assassins exist in the margins of power. You don't walk through the front gate. You scale ivy-covered walls, shivering fingers slick with dew. You blend into kitchens, into brothels, into processions and funerals. You are nobody. You are everybody. And that's the point. You've never seen yourself as evil. You've seen evil. You've worked for it. You've looked it in the eyes and watched it sigh with pleasure after your knife did its job. But you're just trying to stay out of a shallow grave. Or maybe just buy another month before they come for you too. The church says your soul is lost. They say only fire and torment await. But they don't know your story. They don't know what hunger tastes like after 10 days. They don't know the sound of your mother coughing herself to death while you beg a nobleman's guard for old bread. They certainly don't know what it feels like to watch a tax collector step over your sister's body and laugh. Still, when you dream, if you dream, it's not of the kills. It's of clean linen warm broth and the sound of wind through a quiet meadow. Things that never involved blood. There are no guilds not for people like you. No secret societies with matching rings and cool catchphrases. Maybe in Venice or Baghdad, that's real. But not here. Here, if there are others like you don't meet them. You might kill one of them tomorrow and never know. Every now and then, though, you hear rumors. A man in Prague who vanished through a keyhole. A woman in Toulouse who poisons only on holy days. A boy in Flanders who carries a flute, said to hypnotize guards with a tune. Historians still argue whether any of those people ever truly existed. Maybe they did. Maybe they were just desperate souls like you who got lucky until they didn't. You once passed a hanging body bloated and buzzing with flies. Someone had scrawled "Death to Kings" beneath it in clumsy charcoal. People looked away, scurried faster, but you stopped. Because the face was familiar. Someone you worked with once, shared a candle and a crust of bread with. They didn't catch her for what she did. They caught her because someone whispered her name. That's all it ever takes. You are not brave. You're not noble. You are simply moving forward sideways into shadows through alleys, because if you ever stop, you'll be next. And somewhere out there, someone just whispered your name. The first time someone offers you coin for a killing, you don't laugh. You just stare at them long and hard, because deep down, some part of you knew this was coming. You've seen the way people look at you, like a stray dog skulking through market stalls, like something less than human. And that man in the tavern, he saw it too. No one's born an assassin, but the road to becoming one. Oh, it starts early. Maybe it was when your village was burned in some lord's feud you never understood. Maybe your parents died of plague, and the local priest locked the door instead of letting you in. Or maybe you were sold. Yes, sold. Children go missing all the time after all. Historians still argue whether it was organized trafficking or just cruel coincidence, but the streets of medieval cities overflowed with lost youth. You start by stealing food. Then you get good at it. Then you steal from people. One day, someone grabs your wrist and you stab them, not out of rage, not even out of fear, just instinct. And suddenly you're different. Suddenly you realize no one's going to come help you, ever again. Cities in the Middle Ages are brutal machines that chew people up and spit out bones. You walk through mud thick with sewage past rows of crooked houses leaning like drunkards. The air smells of tanneries, dead rats, and fire. And in the corners of it all, places even rats avoid, are children like you, filthy, hungry, hollow-eyed. You learn quick who to trust, who to never look in the eye, who'll trade a crust of bread for your silence, or worse. By the time you're a teenager, you've already seen things no child should. You've watched a man burned alive for heresy. You've seen corpses floating in the canal, missing their shoes because someone pried them off. And you've come to understand something vital. Violence is currency, not just coin. Real power. You don't own land. You don't have a name. But if you can make someone disappear, that gives you leverage. That gives you purpose. So when the offer comes, when that cloaked figure slides next to you and asks if you want to make a little more than pickpocket scraps, you listen, because there's nothing else. Because sleeping on straw with blood under your nails is better than starving in an alley. Your first client is no villain, just a scared merchant who wants his rival gone. You expect fire and brimstone, a cursed blade, a sense of doom. But the job, it's almost simple. Watch, wait, act. You follow the target for days pretending to beg. You note patterns, how he walks, when he sleeps, who he meets. You learn patience not from wisdom, but from the deep, cold fear of failure. The kill is messy. It's always messy. There's no honor. Just a frenzied few seconds, a lot of blood, and your heart beating so loud you think it might burst. You flee before the screaming starts. That night, the merchant gives you a pouch of coins and a dead look. He says, "Don't come back." And you don't. From there, it spirals. Word spreads not through letters or contracts, but in the language of glances and nods. A tavern keeper tells a traveling bard who whispers to a brothel girl, who passes the name along to a spice seller who's looking for a solution to a problem. It's all done with code, no names, no promises. But each job leaves a mark, not just on your hands, but your mind. You start to sleep with your back against walls. You stop smiling. People notice. Eventually, even your reflection looks like someone else, a shadow of the person you used to be. And then comes the moment you truly can't turn back. The day you kill someone who's never harmed a soul. Just a pawn. Just a child of a rival house. Maybe 12, maybe 10. And you do it because someone tells you to. Because you need the coin. Because hunger doesn't care about innocence. That's when your soul breaks quietly without ceremony. Later you try to justify it. Say it was mercy. Say it was politics. Say the world is cruel. But nothing sticks. It just becomes another stone in the sack you carry, getting heavier every year. There's a saying among your kind. The first kill makes you human. The 10th makes you invisible. You start to notice you're not part of the world anymore. You're outside it, watching lovers kiss from rooftops, watching children laugh through windows, watching people live while you drift between them unseen. Sometimes you wonder if you could stop. If you could run far enough, change your face, find a quiet village and grow herbs. But you know the truth. Someone would find you. Someone always does. Because in this world, your kind is useful. And useful things never stay hidden for long. No one ever sits you down and says, "Here's how to kill a man." You don't get a handbook, a mentor, or a crash course with a dummy made of straw. You just survive. And then you keep surviving. And every mistake, every slip, it teaches you something painful, personal, and permanent. The first time you try to climb a wall, you fall. Not far, just enough to tear your hand open on a nail and sprain your ankle. You crawl away humiliated, soaking wet, cursing your own stupidity. The second time, you wear gloves. But now you can't grip as tightly and you nearly fall again. The third time you use your teeth to hold the gloves and put them on only after the climb. You learn because you have to. You practice on shadows, on stray cats, on pigs in butcher stalls. Not for cruelty, though it's cruel, but to study how fast they bleed, where the arteries lie, what it feels like to press a blade through muscle and not vomit. You notice how even a shallow cut can end a life if placed right, how pressure behind the ear drops a person like a sack of grain, how a scream can be muffled with just your hand if you do it fast enough. There's no one teaching you stealth, no graceful ballet of footsteps, just knights hiding in alleys, learning the difference between silence and stillness. You find that dry straw creaks more than wet straw, that cats are often better sentries than men, that drunks make the best distractions, especially if you buy their last drink and point them toward your enemy's door. Every city is different too. In one place, guards wear bells. In another, they go barefoot. You learn to listen for the sound of armor rubbing against itself, for boots on cobblestone, for the hiss of an oil lamp just being lit. You learn to spot patterns, who patrols where and when, where the blind spots are in castle walls, which rooftops sag and which ones groan. And then there's blood. No one tells you how much of it there is. Movies always lie about that. There's too much. It gets everywhere, under fingernails, in your mouth, in your dreams. You learn to carry rags, to avoid white clothing, to time your strikes during the rain if you can. One time you botch it. Bad. You think the merchant is alone. You stab him and his son walks in. The boy screams. You freeze. That second costs you a month's worth of healing and a deep knife wound in your side. But worse than the pain is the realization hesitation kills. So you stop hesitating. You teach yourself to act, then think. To be ice, not fire. Some things you do regret. That girl in the mill, for instance. She was kind. She gave you warm bread once, no questions asked. And later, when her father was your target, you had to burn the whole building. You don't know if she was inside. You never asked. You never went back. You learn strange things too, like how garlic rubbed on leather makes it less slippery, how beeswax on a blade keeps it from rusting in salty air, that goose fat keeps your joints warm in winter, and that if you eat too little, your hands shake. But if you eat too much, you can't run. It's all a balance between speed and silence, strength and subtlety, presence and erasure. One of the quirkiest tricks you pick up comes from a gravedigger who owed you a favor. He teaches you how to feign death. A bit of sheep's blood, a reed hidden in the mouth, and the right kind of fall. It only works once, but when it does, it's brilliant. You escape a locked cell that way, leaving behind a very confused priest who swears he saw your soul rise. You try poisons once, just once. It's not for you, too slow. Too many variables. Someone changes cups. Someone smells the bitter almonds. Someone just doesn't drink. You'd rather deal with steel. At least steel never lies. Some say there's a hidden guild, a master order of assassins who pass knowledge down in secret. Historians still argue whether such a thing ever truly existed in the West, or if it's just another bedtime story. But for you, the only school is pain, and its lessons are etched into scar tissue. Eventually, your instincts sharpen. You can sense a trap before it springs. You can tell when a man is about to lie. You can feel eyes on you before they blink. It's not magic. It's not prophecy. It's repetition, experience, and maybe a little paranoia. But there's a downside. You start to lose your humanity in the training. The walls go up. You stop laughing. You forget the sound of your own voice when it's not whispering threats or fake names. You can't sleep unless your back is to stone. And even then, your hand grips a knife under your cloak. Sometimes you look at normal people, farmers, blacksmiths, barmaids, and wonder how they do it. How they live without constant calculation. How they smile without flinching. And just once you try to blend in. You spend a week in a small village helping mend fences, pretending to be a wandering shepherd. It's the happiest week you've had in years. Then someone recognizes your face, and you're forced to kill again. You don't carry swords. Not just because they're heavy or scream, "I'm a threat," but because you can't explain one when a guard stops you and asks, "Why is a baker's boy carrying a longsword?" You carry what no one notices, what they overlook, dismiss, underestimate. And in your hands, those things become death. The knife is the obvious one, but not some sleek, perfect blade forged by a master. Yours is a kitchen knife. The tip's chipped. The handle is wrapped in dirty cloth to stop it slipping. You stole it from a cook who once insulted your stench. You sharpen it daily on the underside of a stone bench near the river. But knives are boring, too expected, and you like to be unexpected. A wire, just a piece of piano wire, thin, strong, silent, slipped through a small wooden spool and worn around your waist, hidden by a ragged sash. In a pinch, it's perfect for strangulation. Once you used it to set a trap in a stairwell. The Baron's guards never saw it. The fifth one fell like a marionette with his strings cut. You still remember the thud of his skull hitting the flagstone. Then there's the nail-rusted, long torn from the wreckage of a burnt-out chapel. You carried it in your boot for weeks. One night, caught weaponless, you jammed it into a target's eye. It bent, stayed inside, and you left it there. It was poetic in a very dark way. Next day, you stole another nail. You're creative when desperate, and you are often desperate. One rainy night, no weapons left, you used a loose roof tile. Heavy clay, slick with moss. Dropped it from above while a guard was relieving himself in an alley. Crushed the back of his skull like a melon. You spent the next 2 hours picking pieces of tile from his blood-matted hair to make sure no one could trace it. That job bought you boots. Rope, of course, but not like the kind used in gallows. Your rope is thin, frayed, hidden under your tunic in loops. You've practiced knotting it silently, even in the dark. One time, you lowered yourself into a cathedral, through a stained glass window, swinging silently while the bishop slept below. You didn't kill him, just took something from his desk, but you left the rope hanging so he'd know. Tools are weapons. A hammer from a farrier's stall, a chisel from a sculptor's crate, a shepherd's crook once used to pull a countess from her balcony during a masquerade. Every object has potential. You once saw a man use a wheel of cheese as a distraction, rolled it down a corridor while he vanished the opposite way. You laughed for days. You still think about him. Hope he lived. Poisons are too unreliable, but you carry powders. Ground glass black pepper, crushed mustard seeds, all things you can fling into someone's face during a fight. Not lethal. Just enough to buy a few seconds. And in your line of work, a few seconds is a lifetime. Even fire becomes a weapon. You carry wax-sealed packets of pitch-soaked cloth. Light it, toss it, run. A burning room causes chaos, panic, screaming, all things that make it easier for you to slip out unnoticed. One job required you to make it look like a kitchen accident. You used 3 of those packets. No one asked questions. Clothing itself can be a weapon. Loose sleeves that hide blades. Cloaks with lead weights in the hem to strike or distract. Once you sewed tiny bells inside a nobleman's garments, so every time he walked, guards thought an assassin was near. He died by his own men's blades during a panicked fit. You watched from a rooftop chewing dry bread. The strangest weapon you've ever used. A goose, yes. A real goose. The manor courtyard was swarming with them. Territorial beasts, those birds. You stirred them up, let them chase the guards into chaos, and slipped into the cellar while feathers flew. Historians still argue whether it was a spontaneous act or deliberate manipulation. You'll never tell. You understand objects in a way others don't. Where a noble sees a goblet, you see a blunt object. Where a maid sees broom bristles, you see sharpened splinters hidden inside a pillow. Everything is dual purpose. Survival demands it, and you always leave a weapon behind. Not the tool itself, but the idea of it. A broken candlestick bent just wrong. A dropped spoon coated in something suspicious. People get paranoid. They see danger in the mundane. You let fear do the rest. But the truth, improvisation isn't just about weapons. It's about mindset, adaptation. You can't afford to rely on routine. You don't have a forge, a quartermaster, or a supply line. You have trash piles, gutters, and stolen opportunity, and it has to be enough. You've met others who improvise too. A woman who used sewing needles laced into her hair. A boy who coated his flute in poison and kissed his target's cheek. A monk who swore by sharpened quills. Some didn't last. Some became legends. Some became cautionary tales. You carry their stories like you carry your tools hidden, ready, sharp. You once heard a nobleman scoff at a street urchin, saying a man without a sword is no threat. You laughed, quietly, because you've killed more with kitchen scraps than he ever could with steel. And now, with the sun setting over the crooked rooftops and the scent of tallow and boiled onions rising from the city below, you finger the chipped edge of a broken mirror just in case. Because tonight, anything could become your weapon, even the light. It starts with a scrap of parchment, rolled tight, jammed into a crack beneath the tavern's back stairs, the place no one goes unless they know. You find it at dawn damp with morning fog, and already you feel the shift in the air. The jobs don't usually come this way, not anymore. Not since your last one got too messy, too loud. But here it is. No name, no coin, just 3 words. Lady Vestra, Midwinter, North Wing. You read it twice, then burn it in a candle stub. Just the name gives you chills. Not because you fear her, though you should, but because you know what targeting someone like her means. A noblewoman protected by bloodlines and battlements. Assassinating peasants is easy, merchants risky. But a noble, that's a different league. That's a death sentence if things go even a hair wrong. You don't accept right away. You spend 2 days walking the city, watching, listening. At the apothecary, you overhear a servant whisper about the upcoming feast. At the bathhouse, someone mentions Lady Vestra's fondness for jasmine oil. And at the butcher's stall, a guard grumbles about being reassigned to the upper tower because the lady's got enemies. That confirms it. She's scared. She knows something's coming. By day 3, you receive the second message. This time, slipped into your pack a crude map, charcoal lines, tracing corridors you don't recognize. On the back, payment after confirmation. Disappear after. You crumple it. Smooth it, crumple it again. No signature, no seal. Just the kind of bold confidence only someone rich and desperate would dare. You start to prepare. You can't just walk into a noble's keep and hope for luck. You need timing. You need a face. So, you visit the tannery and borrow a porter's smock. You practice his hunch, his limp, the way he wipes sweat with his sleeve. The guards will glance right past you if you do it well. Next, you scout the route. You follow wagons headed toward the estate, lingering near a cart of cabbages until you see the rear gate. Guards posted, yes, but distracted. One of them drinks. A lot. Good. Sloppiness is your friend. You spend a few nights on the rooftops nearby watching torch patterns. Guards swap every 3rd hour. One of them never checks the western windows. Another leaves his post to relieve himself near the stables. Patterns, weaknesses. You log them all in your head. Then come the props. A bucket, a rag, a few bruises you apply to your own face, using a rock and a bit of theatrical groaning. You make yourself look small, invisible, forgettable. A man who belongs nowhere and therefore can go anywhere. You buy perfumed cheap jasmine, a mockery of the lady's real scent. You dab it behind your ears before slipping into the manor grounds. The smell will confuse any dog that picks up your trail later. You don't sleep much that week. Too much rides on this. And every night you dream of noble silk turning red. Not with guilt those dreams left you long ago, but with pressure speed timing. You rehearse in your head 100 times. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins had actual routines or relied purely on improvisation. You'd laugh at that debate if you had time. Of course there's routine. You survive by it. And you abandon it the moment it no longer serves. You start preparing for worst-case scenarios. You memorize 2 escape routes. You bury a change of clothes in a haystack 3 streets away. You stash coin under a loose cobble in case you need to bribe someone mid-flight. You plan to vanish so completely, no one will even remember your face, just the mess you left behind. Then finally the day comes, midwinter. Cold air cracks your skin and your breath fogs in the alley as you wait for the wagon. The driver doesn't look at you when you climb on. That's part of the deal. He's just another pawn in this theater of silence. At the rear gate, you unload crates like the rest. You grunt, you shuffle. You wipe sweat from your brow, even though you're freezing. A guard waves you through. You don't thank him. That would be suspicious. Inside the keep, it's all stone and silence. The nobles are still abed. Servants glide past you, faces low, and you blend in perfectly. No one sees the man who's part of the furniture. You move like you've always belonged. You reach the north wing. As the sun hits its highest point, timed to when the feast preparations draw attention to the main hall. Most of the staff are busy. The halls are thinner. You duck into a linen closet and wait. You listen. Footsteps pass. A door creaks. Somewhere a maid hums a tune off key. Then silence. You move. Every step now is a breath held. The corridor is draped in tapestries, and your reflection flickers in the polished floor tiles. You count the doors. 1, 2, 3. There. Lady Vestra's chamber. You don't knock. You don't pause. You slip inside like a shadow. And for one heartbeat, you are nothing. You are air. You are silence. You are the answer to a question no one dares ask out loud. She is there, sitting, waiting, and she is not alone. Lady Vestra sits in a high-backed chair of black oak, her fingers laced calmly over a book she isn't reading. She doesn't startle, doesn't gasp, just lifts her eyes to meet yours with a gaze so steady, so utterly unfazed, you wonder if she's been expecting you all along. But the other presence in the room, him you didn't account for. A knight. Not in full armor, but armored enough. A breastplate glinting with etched lions. One hand rests on his sword's pommel, the other loosely on the arm of a smaller chair. He was behind the tapestry when you entered. Now he stands. You freeze, half a breath, half a thought. The lady doesn't scream. She lifts a single eyebrow as if mildly amused. Well, she says they finally sent one who didn't trip over the carpets. You say nothing. You never speak if you don't have to. The knight's hand shifts. You raise your palms, slowly, peacefully. But your mind is racing. Every object in the room cataloged in a blink. Candles real wax, a tea tray silver hot, drapes flammable, nothing close enough, nothing immediately lethal. Your early Vestra continues. Her voice is smoke and silk. I was told mid-feast, not midday. So she is expecting you, or someone like you. That's worse. The knight steps between you and the lady, casual but precise. His sword is still sheathed. He's giving you the illusion of choice. A polite threat. You know that game. I could have you flayed, she says, standing now, brushing folds of velvet from her lap. But I imagine the person who sent you would appreciate a message returned. She walks right up to you, close enough to smell the jasmine and something sharper, metallic like ink or blood. Tell me, she murmurs, was it my husband, my cousin, or that simpering bishop with the liver spots? You meet her gaze, still say nothing. But the knight shifts again just slightly, and you see it. His boot doesn't match the other. One iron-tipped one worn soft. An old wound or a disguise. Either way, a weakness. Historians still argue whether Lady Vestra was ever truly threatened, or if she staged these attempts to bait out traitors in her court. Judging by the ease with which she handles this moment, you suspect both could be true. She circles you now like a cat assessing a bird that might still bite. You're not from around here, she says finally. Too quiet, too clean, too patient. She's wrong, of course. You're filthy. You stink of smoke and wet cloth. But she means your demeanor, the calm, the discipline. Most killers in her world are loud, desperate, hungry. You're surgical. And that unnerves her more than a blade would. Then she does something unexpected. She snaps her fingers. 2 more guards enter from a side chamber. These ones carry crossbows. You are cornered! No exits, no tricks. So you improvise. You fall to your knees fast, violent, like you've been struck. Your arms raised, your face twisted into the mask of a terrified servant. You mumble nonsense, slurred syllables, a made-up dialect. It buys you 2 seconds. 2 seconds in which the knight hesitates, the crossbows falter, and Lady Vestra narrows her eyes. Then in one fluid movement, you roll backward under the tea table, kick it up towards the crossbowman, and grab the hot teapot midair. You fling it. Scalding liquid hits the knight in the eyes. He roars. You dive for the closest guard, driving your elbow into his throat before wrenching his crossbow free. You fire once into the second's knee. Chaos. Vestra doesn't run. That's the strangest part. She steps backward, one hand reaching for something at her waist, a dagger, small, jewel-handled, ceremonial, but sharp enough. You rise, and you face her. She stands between you and the shattered window. You can't get out without going through her. I see now, she says, her voice tight with fury. You're not his man. You're freelance. She lunges. You parry not with a weapon, but with the broken tea tray. Her blade skips off the edge, slicing your forearm. Blood spatters her cheek. Her eyes widen. Then she stumbles because you kicked her knee. Hard. She falls sideways, crashing into a lacquered cabinet. You bolt for the window. The knight is up again, but dazed. The guards are groaning. Vestra is down, breathing but bleeding. The crossbow clatters to the floor as you leap. Glass shatters. Cold air rushes past as you fall onto a lower roof roll and slide off into the snow-packed hedge below. You don't look back. Not yet. Because the mission isn't done. You limp through frozen hedges and burst into the muddy edge of a garden, long forgotten by the estate's stewards. Your breath is a visible plume, your arm leaking warmth, your ribs screaming with every motion. But you're alive. And more importantly, you're inside, because this was always the plan. The first entrance was only the test. The real infiltration begins now. You double back. Not away, but deeper into the bones of the castle. You move along servants' paths into cellars that smell of brine and mold. No one notices a bleeding man carrying linens. And when they do, they assume punishment or plague, either way, not their problem. It's a miracle of hierarchy. The higher someone is in status, the less they see. A nobleman wouldn't recognize his own cook without her apron. And as long as your disguise changes, your limp deepens, and your expression stays vacant, you are just another drudge in the background. You reach the laundry first. It's sweltering, steamy, filled with women, beating linen and cursing noble bloodstains. You keep your head low, grab a soiled cloak and wrap it around your shoulders. It smells like goat and sweat. Perfect. Next, the kitchens, boiling pots, dogs underfoot, the banging of pans like drums in a funeral march. You steal a bowl of broth, add ash to it, and start limping through the halls like a lost page boy. No one stops you. They all have too much to do. Your goal now, reposition. Hide in plain sight. If Vestra survived, and you think she did, then they'll seal the estate soon. Doors locked, guards doubled, panic brewing like spoiled wine. But that panic is your advantage. You slip into the chapel just as bells start ringing, not for prayer, for alarm. Inside, it's cold and dark. A single stained glass window spills light across the pews. You hide behind the altar, press your bleeding arm to your side, and wait. Count your breaths. Study the sounds of feet racing past outside. Hours pass. Historians still argue whether medieval strongholds were truly secure or just layered mazes, too confusing for outsiders. You know the answer. It's both. The complexity is the security. But for someone like you who thrives in complexity, it's a welcome invitation. As dusk settles, you emerge again. The chapel is empty. Your arm is crusted in dried blood. Your legs ache. But your senses are sharper than ever. Now you blend in. You tie your cloak higher. Smudge your face with ash. Walk like a tired stable hand. You find a wheelbarrow near the east stables, load it with straw, and move slowly toward the inner courtyard. Guards pass. Some glance at you, most ignore you. One mutters bloody cooks and moves on. You time your path with a wagon headed for the kitchen stores. As it opens the rear portcullis, you slide behind it, following the shadow it casts. A moment later, you're in the inner bailey, the real heart of the keep. This is where the risk triples. Every door might hold a soldier. Every corridor might echo with the wrong name. But you have your target. Lady Vestra may be wounded, but she's alive. You saw the dagger fall, not her breath stop. That means she'll be moved, protected, hidden, probably to the solar tower, small defensible, and out of reach, unless you're already inside. You climb the narrow servant's stair, a twisting, crumbling stone tunnel, lit only by the faintest torchlight. Each step echoes. You breathe through your mouth. Your blood has dried enough to stop dripping, but you still feel the sting. You press forward. Halfway up, you meet someone, a girl, 15 maybe, carrying a tray of linens. Her eyes go wide. You hold a finger to your lips. Then you slip a coin into her hand and whisper, "Kitchen's leaking. Need towels." She stares, nods, keeps walking. You're not sure if she believes you or is just too afraid to question. Either way, she lets you pass. The upper level is quieter. Thicker rugs, fewer doors, more paintings. You see a portrait of Vestra as a child smiling, surrounded by dogs. It feels surreal. The same girl who now lies wounded because of you. The irony If she'd been your client, you might have admired her. That calm, that courage. But fate flipped the coin another way. At the tower entrance, you pause, 2 guards posted, both armed, talking low. You need a distraction. You whistle soft 2 notes like a bird. Then again. One of them shifts. Hear that? He moves to check. You slide behind the tapestry opposite them, sneak up the short hall to the adjacent library, and drop a shelf of scrolls. Crash, shouting. They run, and you're through. Up the final steps now, heart pounding like a drum. You're in the solar. Rich rugs. A lit brazier. A table set with untouched food. And on the chaise, Lady Vestra, bandaged awake. She turns, and this time there is no knight. She's lying on her side when you enter. Pale, yes, but far from broken. Her hand is already resting on the hilt of that same jeweled dagger, now cleaned and sharpened. Her eyes, those unnervingly steady eyes, lock onto yours without a flicker. For a full second, no one moves. The brazier crackles softly beside her. Through the tower windows, moonlight pours in, painting her in silver and shadow. You breathe once, slow. This is the closest you've ever been to your target without acting. And still you hesitate. Twice in one day, she says dryly, you must be either very good at or very stupid. You step further into the room. Quiet, calculated. The door closes behind you with a soft click. No lock on this side. You'll have to be fast. I'll assume she continues. You weren't satisfied with your earlier performance. No answer. You never give your voice freely. Names can be forgotten. Voices haunt. But you notice something odd, her posture. She isn't sitting upright anymore. She leans against cushions in a way that's too casual, too weary. Her wound must be deeper than she let on. That changes things, and yet she's stalling. You scan the room. The tray of food is untouched, but the wine goblet has moved, only slightly, enough to suggest a visitor. The brazier glows with too much heat for a woman resting alone. You're not alone. You step toward the curtain. Behind it, nothing, just a dressing screen and a folded robe. But then a hand grabs your ankle. From under the chaise, a blade flashes. You twist, instinct snapping into place. The knife misses your calf by a hair. You kick down hard. Bone cracks. A grunt of pain. You spin, grab the man by the collar, and slam his head into the floorboards twice before he goes limp. Vestra hasn't moved, but her breathing is faster now, so she murmurs, "You're better than the last." You advance. Each step is its own question. End it now, wait for her to beg, or walk away and live. But you know the answer already. You crouch beside her. Her dagger trembles in her hand, but she doesn't raise it. "You'll regret this," she says, voice low. "There are worse people than me." You pluck the blade from her grasp gently, like removing a toy from a child. "I was trying to fix things," she whispers, "not just for me, for the whole damn realm." You tilt your head. It's a story you've heard before. Every noble with blood on their hands claims righteousness. Every tyrant thinks they're the exception. Still something in her voice rings true. But your orders were clear. No room for sympathy, no space for doubt. You lift the blade. She looks straight into your eyes and in a soft breath says, "Then make it clean." And you do. Fast. Surgical. A single thrust beneath the ribs, straight to the heart. Her eyes widen, but only slightly. Her lips part, not in pain but in surprise. She was ready. But even readiness can't prepare someone for the exact moment. You lower her gently. She dies with less sound than her guards made tripping over each other hours ago. You take nothing. No trophy, no token. That's for amateurs. You only leave silence, and perhaps the faintest trace of jasmine in the air. But you can't linger. Already footsteps echo below, muffled, hesitant, but rising. You move fast now. Down the stairs through the tapestry passage back to the library. You knock over another shelf just for chaos. Then down through the servants' stairwell, barely avoiding a cook carrying a pot of carrots who screams when she sees the blood on your sleeve. You sprint through the eastern wing, find the window you noted earlier, half-shuttered, unused. You smash it open with your elbow roll across the sill and land in a cold, narrow alley behind the kitchens. You're not free yet. You toss the dagger into a well as you pass. Change comes fast. You duck into a coal shed, strip the cloak, pull on the spare tunic hidden beneath a barrel 2 days prior. The blood is still damp on your skin, but your face is different now. You walk out limping again, but in a different direction, holding a broom. Outside the gate, no one looks at you twice. Not even when the bell starts ringing from the tower. By the time the alarm spreads, you're already gone. Historians still debate how Lady Vestra died. The records are conflicting. Some say poison. Others blame her husband. A few hint at a lover's betrayal. But you know the truth. And you'll never write it down, because silence is your legacy. And tonight, you've added another ghost to the list. You keep walking down the slope behind the estate, through patches of frostbitten grass and frozen dung, past the edge of the village, where chimney smoke curls like quiet accusations. The sky is black, now stars, barely peeking through the low-hanging cloud, and each breath you take feels like chewing glass. Sharp, cold, unforgiving. But you can't stop. Stopping means questions. Stopping means guards might catch up. Stopping means thinking about what just happened. So you walk faster, past the old mill long abandoned, over the narrow footbridge half rotted, where the boards creak like whispered warnings. You reach the woods before the dogs are loosed. That's something. Either the estate's still too stunned to organize the search, or they haven't realized who's missing yet. You make for the river. It's a wide thing, black and indifferent, and you plunge into it without ceremony. The water steals your breath instantly. You fight not to scream. Your arm, already wounded, feels like it's being chewed by wolves. But you keep kicking. Historians still argue whether assassins used rivers as escape routes, or if that's just poetic myth. You'd love to see one of them try it. See how poetic they feel with leeches on their ankles and mud in their mouth. On the other side, you crawl out like something half dead, shivering so hard your bones rattle. You pull the oilskin packet from under your tunic, miraculously still dry, and take out the coarse peasant shirt and trousers you stashed days ago. New clothes, new self. You bury your old tunic in the mud, blood and all. By dawn, you're walking into a new town. You keep your head low, posture bent. You mumble when spoken to, and you always carry something, a basket, a broom, a jug. People notice empty hands, but a worker, a servant, no one remembers those. You find a stable to sleep in. Pay the owner a copper to muck stalls and pretend you've been there all week. He doesn't ask questions. His wife eyes your accent but says nothing. That night you sleep next to horses, their warmth keeping you from freezing. It smells like hay and manure and safety. You wake with a start the next day to the sound of hooves and shouting. Riders. Vestra's house is moving fast. They'll send letters, offers of gold, for information, threats, for silence. They'll kick down doors, shake every beggar until teeth rattle, but you're already gone again. You shave your face with a broken mirror, pluck your eyebrows, rub soot into your hair. You add a limp to the other leg, just to confuse anyone watching from behind. You throw out your name. Pick a new one. This week you're Thomas. Maybe next week you'll be Marta. Doesn't matter. Your old self is dead, that's the rule. Always be someone dying and someone being born. At the market you catch wind of your success. A drunk soldier says, Lady Vestra was found in her solar, face like marble blood, like a painter's dream. Another claims she was assassinated by a rival duchess. Another insists it was suicide, that her dagger was in her hand. The stories multiply like rats. And you're the ghost in all of them. You buy bread and cheese with stolen coin and eat by the river. You don't taste it. You just chew, think, plan. Your client hasn't paid you yet. That's how it always goes. They wait until the body's cold, the rumors hot, and the panic full bloom. You hate that, but it's the job. Payment never comes first. Trust does. And trust is a joke, so you prepare to vanish again just in case. You scout 3 different roads out. One to the east, open fields, risky but fast. One to the south, dense forest, slow but quiet. And one by water, where a barge of onions is due to leave in 2 days. You hedge your bets. That's survival. And still you wait. The message arrives on the 4th day. A boy no older than 10 hands you a small linen pouch. Runs off before you can blink. Inside coin. Heavy. Enough for a year's food. Enough to disappear. Also inside a single feather. White. Unblemished. Likely a symbol. But from who? Because here's the thing, you were never told why Vestra had to die. Only that she did. And now that the job's done, you're starting to wonder. Who gains, who suffers? You don't like wondering, so you pack your things and go. No farewells, no backward glances. Just a final glance at your own reflection in a puddle, and even that barely recognizable. A part of you feels lighter, another part heavier, because every kill buys you time. But it also adds another brick to the weight on your back. And eventually even ghosts buckle under what they carry. It begins with a whisper, not from a stranger or a messenger, but from the stables themselves. You're cleaning dung, pretending to be someone who's never held a blade, when a groom mutters to a colleague, "They're saying someone's buying names now." Quiet ones. People who might have seen too much. You pause just for a second, because you know what that means. It means the job was too clean, too surgical. It means someone knows, not the guards, not Vestra's family, your client. You finish shoveling, tip your cap, and walk out like nothing's wrong. But already the cogs are turning. You've felt this shift before, when a job goes too well too fast, and the one who paid for it realizes they've created a liability, and that liability is you. So you check your escape stash again: coins, dry food, 2 knives, a disguise tucked into a burlap sack. Everything's still there, but now not good enough. If they're hunting you, it won't just be guards. It'll be bounty hunters, spies, poison. You move to a different village by nightfall. Change your name again. This time you're a mute. It saves you from having to explain your accent, your scars, your silence. Most people leave mutes alone. They assume you're either holy or cursed. Either way useful. You sleep in a chapel loft. You don't pray. But the candlelight and the smell of old incense calm your breathing for a while. Then 2 days later, the first real sign comes. You wake to find a coin on your chest, a silver piece, same kind as your payment, but it's been split clean down the center, an old signal. In some parts of the continent, it's a bounty marker, meant for the eyes of those who know what it means. Someone has put a price on you. Historians still argue whether medieval contract killers ever faced blowback from clients, or if that's modern paranoia projected backward. You snort at the thought. If they'd lived your life, they'd never have to ask. You leave the chapel before sunrise. And now you're not just hiding. You're watching your back every second. The bartender who doesn't quite meet your eyes. The old man who follows you out of the market. The sick-looking child who lingers just a little too long before running away. You don't sleep in the same place twice. You stop accepting food from strangers. And you trust no one, not even the beggar who once gave you a crust of bread during your worst winter. You see him again in a nearby town weeks later, standing too still in the alley. You don't greet him. You just disappear around the corner. Because this is the price of success. You did the job too well, too fast, too completely. And now someone thinks you're a loose end. Or maybe they're afraid you'll talk. Or maybe, and this is the one that keeps you up, they enjoyed watching you work. And now they want to see how well you run. You hear stories too. A man strangled in his sleep. A woman found with her tongue cut out and a feather in her mouth. Another feather, like the one you received with your payment. The symbol wasn't decoration. It was a signature, or worse, a brand. You dig deeper. You begin to ask questions through intermediaries. A tavern maid you trust with half the truth. A crippled thief who owes you a favor from 5 winters back. You never show your face, never meet directly, and what they bring back chills you The coin is being used in multiple towns. The feather has shown up before. And worse, Vestra's death has triggered something larger. Power has shifted. Alliance is broken. A war might be brewing. And whoever paid you doesn't want you sticking around to explain it. So you consider the unthinkable, hiding forever, vanishing into the countryside, cutting off your own finger to erase your prints, burning your own face, things you swore you'd never do. But then you realize there is no forever. Not for people like you. Your only chance is to get ahead of it, to disappear before they tighten the noose, to change shape so completely they'd mistake you for your own ghost. You ditch the gear, you sell the clothes, you even burn your own safe house, gone. And when the bounty hunter does come, tall, scarred, polite as poison, you're already 3 cities away, listening through a wall as he asks the innkeeper if a quiet traveler with pale eyes pass through. You hear your own description spoken like a prayer, and then you walk out the back wearing someone else's shoes, face, and life. 1 step ahead, but only just. You live now like a wisp of smoke, never long in one place, never solid enough to grasp. You've given up homes, names, even habits. The less you repeat, the less they can trace. You're not running anymore. You're erasing yourself, your past, your scent in the world. Your new bed is a hayloft, the kind no one checks unless the barn catches fire. You sleep during market hours when townsfolk are too busy to notice a stranger in their midst. You eat what you can trade with coin, no longer marked. You speak only when your new accent is flawless. You've practiced 5. You learn to forge. Not documents, you never carry those, but wounds. A fake limp. A hunch. You scar your own cheek with a hot nail to mimic a disease you've invented. You smear goat's blood on your tunic and fake coughing fits just to keep people away. And it works, for a while. But living in secrecy is exhausting in a way death isn't. At least death is decisive. Secrecy. It bleeds you in droplets, tiny sacrifices every hour, until you're just a shadow walking in boots. 2 big clothes, 2 plain eyes, too watchful. You start to forget your own face. Literally. One night you pass a mirror in an abandoned villa and flinch. The man staring back looks like someone you once robbed, or maybe someone who once robbed you. You're not sure. You don't talk to anyone more than once. Never the same baker twice, never the same gate guard. Even your smiles are rationed, given only when absolutely necessary. You once told a joke to a merchant girl, just to see if you still could. She laughed. Then you disappeared before she could ask your name. People become dangerous when they remember you, so you learn to vanish before that happens. You stop sleeping indoors. Even walls start to feel like traps. Instead, you learn where the dry caves are, which roofs you can climb without breaking tiles, how to balance between chimneys to stay warm at night. You start carrying small mirrors, not to check your face, but to see behind you. You grow fond of dogs, not as pets, but as sentries. Stray mutts can tell you more about a place than the people. Who's passing, who doesn't belong, what's changed. You leave scraps for them. They bark if someone unfamiliar comes near. You meet others like you now and then. People who walk too quietly, eat too efficiently, disappear too fast. You never speak. But you see each other. A nod, a glance, that's it. Recognition and mutual warning. This life doesn't allow for partnerships. Not anymore. Historians still debate whether those who lived in the margins of society ever truly managed to disappear. Some say it was impossible without papers. Others argue that the chaos of medieval life allowed for it. You don't care. You're not trying to win an argument. You're trying to live. And then there's the mind. Because when the world forgets you, you start to forget yourself. Your memories fade. Faces blur. Names you once whispered in rage now drift through your dreams without meaning. You no longer know what you look like when you smile. You no longer know what you sound like when you laugh. You write things down now. Not in journals, that's too dangerous, but on walls, rocks inside hollow trees. Just words. Reminders. Left-handed. Favorite bread is rye. Don't trust red-haired midwives. Had a sister once. Each one a string tying you to a person who may or may not have ever existed, and yet you survive. That's the miracle. Not the killing, not the running, not the hiding. Living, despite it all. Despite the bounty, despite the guilt, despite the silence, and there are moments, brief accidental, where it almost feels okay. Like when you help an old woman carry firewood across a slick path, and she pats your arm with a soft, "Bless you." Like when a child hands you a plum and doesn't ask your name. Like when you hear a song you recognize and hum it off key but still whole. You cling to those. You stockpile them like coins in a secret purse, because someday, if you ever stop, they'll be all you have left. But deep down you know you won't stop, because to stop is to be seen, and to be seen, that's the same as being dead. By now you've learned that every contract is a trap. Not always because of the target, though they're dangerous enough, but because of the offer. Because the moment someone seeks you out, you have to wonder how they even knew where to look. So when a message arrives, hidden in the folds of a fishmonger's wrapping paper, scrawled in crabbed script, you pause before reading. Your fingers hover over the ink. The fish stink masks the faintest whiff of lavender wax. A signature you recognize from before. Your instincts scream too neat, too timely. You burn the paper without even unfolding it. This is your rule now. If a job finds you, it's already suspicious. If the pay is too high, the target too convenient, the details too clear, it's a setup. You live by uncertainty. You only trust the offers that come through 5 layers of intermediaries. A fruit seller tells a tanner, tells a baker's wife, tells a chimney sweep, tells you. That's safe, safer anyway. The contracts you accept now are ghost thin. No names, no details. Sometimes just a place, a time, and a color. You're told to disrupt or delay, rarely to kill. That sort of clarity belongs to dead men. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins operated with such caution. Some say they were blades for hire, nothing more. Others suggest a hidden class of killers who moved like shadows, filtering jobs through riddles and rumor. You like that theory. Makes you feel less alone. When you do take a job, you leave no mark, no signature, not even a method. If your last work ended with a blade, this one ends with a toppled scaffold. The next might be a misplaced wine barrel rolling down a slope at just the right time. Predictability is death, and documentation, that's a myth. You laugh whenever a playwright pens a scene of some noble presenting a signed contract to an assassin, as if you'd ever hold something with your target's name in writing. As if anyone in your profession would risk ink and vellum. You don't write, you don't sign, you don't even nod. A glance is agreement, a silence is a binding oath. You once refused a job just because the offer was too polite, too formal. The girl who delivered it wore perfume, had clean nails. She smiled. You walked away before she finished the pitch. That night she died. Throat opened in the same alley where you'd burned the note. Not your work, but a message. You were right to walk. They wanted someone to die. Anyone would have done. You've developed rituals. Every time you complete a job, you leave something behind, not for flair, but as a warning to future clients. A wilted flower, a snapped quill, a coin with a notch. Each one says, "Don't try to find me. Don't even think about it." And most of them listen. Most. But every now and then someone gets bold. You once met a merchant in an empty wine cellar. He brought guards. 4 of them. Thought you'd be desperate enough to accept on his terms. Promised triple pay if you'd make an example of his rival. You thanked him, shook his hand. 3 days later, his rival was untouched. But the merchant's name was whispered in the ears of a tax collector with a vendetta. He lost everything. And the guards. They found work on the docks, stripped of their swords and their purpose. You never took the coin, you never returned, but you watched just to be sure. Now you mostly avoid cities, too many eyes, too many friends with memories. Your jobs come from ruins, from way stations, from lonely carts on forgotten roads. Once a message was carved into the side of a pig. Took you a day to spot it. That one paid well. You trust animals more than people these days. Birds carry your replies. Dogs warn you of spies. Even the occasional mule proves useful, loud, stubborn, hard to bribe. You stay away from inns, too much chatter. You sleep in barns, in root cellars, in the hollows of old trees. You never touch paper, and you never stay after the job's done, not even for a thank you. Especially not for a thank you, because the moment someone thinks they owe you, they begin to plan how to balance the scale. Some will pay, some will praise, and some will try to kill you. Better to be a ghost than a legend. Better to be forgotten than remembered as a threat. You've never liked the theater. Too much attention, too many eyes. But tonight the square becomes a stage, and you're in the audience hood, pulled low, body hunched, watching a play with no script and a terrible ending. The platform is newly built. Wood still raw, still sharp at the edges. The kind that splinters underfoot. The kind you never walk on unless you're being paid or punished. And today it's the latter. They drag him out by the arms. A boy barely 20, pale, bloodied. shirt torn open like a second execution. You don't recognize him at first, not until they shout his name, Corvin of Briss, and your stomach knots, because you do know Corvin. Not well, not warmly, but enough. He worked fast, reckless, loud. The kind who left calling cards behind thinking it made him look untouchable. You warned him once in passing quiet men live longer. He laughed. Now he screams. They accuse him of murdering a magistrate. The crowd gasps. But it's all performance. Corvin didn't kill that man. You did. 6 nights ago, a quick job in a thunderstorm. No witnesses, no mess, just silence. So why is Corvin here? Because someone needs a body. Someone needs the public to see that justice is served. And in a world that runs on fear and rumors, the difference between truth and convenience is just a matter of timing. They don't question it. He had the wrong tools in his satchel, wrong accent, wrong face at the wrong time, and he screamed when they caught him. You watch in silence as the noose is tightened, then pulled. His legs kick once, twice, then still. The crowd applauds, like it's theater, like it's deserved. You turn away before his boots stop swinging. Historians still debate whether medieval executions were meant as justice or deterrent. But you've always known they're about control. Public rituals meant to feed the illusion that someone's in charge. That order triumphs over chaos. But chaos just watched from the crowd and walked away in silence. You return to your hideout, a crumbling bell tower on the edge of town. You sit in the rafters' legs, dangling over nothing, and you think about Corvin, about how easy it was to shift the blame, about how no one looked deeper. You begin to question your method, your cleanliness, your distance. Has it made you safer or made others more vulnerable? Maybe both, maybe neither. But now you know they don't just kill the guilty, they kill the convenient. You leave town that night quietly, no goodbyes, no marks. You take back roads through fog and frost. You avoid cities. You stop accepting jobs with too many variables, too many middlemen. If the line of trust isn't clean, you walk. Because if they can do that to Corvin, they can do it to anyone. To you. You meet another killer on the road. A woman in a red scarf. Doesn't give her name. Doesn't need to. She just sits by your fire one night and says, "They're hunting louder now." You nod. You both know what she means. The jobs have changed. More public, more violent, and more disposable. The whispers used to be about payment success, who was fastest. Now the whispers are about who's next. She leaves before dawn, doesn't say goodbye. You like her, you never see her again. Later in a market town, you hear a bard sing a tale about Corvin of Briss, the legendary killer, caught by the king's men, swinging like a hero. They made him into a story. They made your kill into his legacy. And no one knows the truth. You keep walking, but that night you carve a name into the underside of a bridge. Not your name, his, just in case history ever forgets. And you light a candle, just for a moment, for a ghost who didn't get to vanish. You think about running, really running. Not just town to town or name to name, but vanishing. leaving the continent, taking a merchant ship to some distant coast, where your language means nothing, where no one knows what you've done, where you could grow olives and pretend your hands never touched a blade. But you know better. You've tried before, and each time the past finds you. Not always as a man with a dagger. Sometimes as a rumor. Sometimes as a scar someone else remembers. Sometimes as a job that somehow inexplicably has your scent on it. So instead of running, you change. Again, haircut short with a barber's dull knife. You nick your scalp in 3 places. Let it bleed. Clothes dyed brown and gray, just enough to look like earth shadow fog. You sew a patch over a hole, using a dead noblewoman's needle. Skin you rub walnut oil into your arms to darken them, hide the pale evidence of years in northern cities. A woman on the coast taught you that trick. She thought you were a runaway monk. You let her think it. Face you smear charcoal along your jaw to mimic stubble. You wear a hood longer than necessary. Eventually you forget what you really look like. Maybe that's a gift. Your new name is Elric, or maybe Marta, depends who asks. You carry a walking stick now, not for need, but for disguise. The limp adds authenticity. You practiced it for weeks. Now it's muscle memory. You start sleeping in places no one wants to look, graveyards under wagon beds, inside collapsed cisterns. You learn to like the smell of mildew. It means you're hidden. You no longer enter towns by the road. You come from the fields, through the livestock gates, muddy and silent. And still, they look, you spot the signs. A man asking about a quiet traveler with knife scars. A woman wearing boots too clean for a village drunk. A blacksmith with calluses in the wrong places. You leave before they make their move. Always one step ahead, always. You change your habits. You no longer eat from public stalls. You grow your own garlic in a stolen patch of soil. You carry salt and dried meat in a hollowed-out book strapped to your chest. And the jobs, they still come. Whispered left under rocks etched into wood. You take fewer now, and only ones that smell right. No nobles, no courts, no politics, just quiet problems. Solvable problems. A cruel landowner who beats his workers. A gang leader who kidnaps children. You're not a hero, but if you must kill, you kill usefully. You start hearing your own legend in taverns. Not by name, of course. No one uses your name. But they speak of the faceless one, of the black candle, of the ghost in the grain. You don't correct them. You let them build a myth around someone else. That's safer. One night while lying under a ruined barn roof, you realize something strange. You've stopped waiting for peace. Not because it's impossible, but because you don't miss it anymore. This is life now. The hiding, the shifting, the stillness before violence, the flick of a blade, the hush of leaves beneath your feet, the pulse that quickens only when you're almost seen. You haven't laughed in months. You try. Once at a farmer's joke about turnips and monks. It comes out broken, but you smile anyway. You're still alive, and that's enough. Historians still argue, Whether these ghost killers ever had lives outside their work, families, loves, homes, maybe they did. Maybe some of them succeeded in disappearing for good. You don't envy them. You understand them. You light another candle that night. For yourself this time. For the parts of you you've buried under all the names. And when you blow it out, you feel something shift like the wind changing direction. Not quite an ending, but something close. Your name was never supposed to be remembered. That was the whole point. But now it moves without you carried in the space between facts and fears. Not your real name, of course, but the idea of you. The shape you leave behind when the killing's done. And the silence thickens. They call you cursed. They say your touch rots flesh. That your eyes see through lies. That you whisper the true names of devils into dying ears. At first it's laughable. You've been called many things, ghost, coward, shadow, but never sorcerer. Now it follows you. In one town, they leave salt circles outside doors when you pass. In another, you find a crude charm, feathers, bones, a lump of wax nailed to a tree where you slept the night before. A child sees you sharpening your knife and screams. You hadn't even looked at her. You are no longer feared as a man. You are myth. And myths don't die cleanly. One morning, a traveling monk begins preaching that the black candle is a demon summoned by apostates. That your work isn't just murder, it's witchcraft. You killed with blade, yes, but always too precisely. Always in ways no ordinary man could. He names you proof that the devil walks among them, and the crowd listens. You burn your cloak that night, the one that's been with you through 6 names and too many winters. It smells of pine smoke and dried blood. You bury the ashes under snow just to be sure. You move again, but the words follow faster than your footsteps. Now wherever you go, someone has heard of you. Not you exactly, but the legend built from your mistakes, your success, your silence. They say you can vanish through stone, that you kill with a single breath, that your shadow moves on its own. And strangest of all, some people want to believe it. Not just fear you, worship you. You find a crude shrine once, hidden in a ruined chapel, 3 stones stacked beside a blackened candle stub. Deliver us, someone scrawled in chalk. You stare at it for a long time, then knock it over, hard, because you're not a god. You're just someone who never had a choice. And yet the myth grows. Historians still debate whether assassins were truly associated with sorcery, or if the connection came later, when chroniclers needed a scapegoat, a symbol of fear to blame for the quiet deaths no one could explain. You know the answer. People can't tolerate power they don't understand, so they turn it into a story, and stories mutate. You're accused of things you didn't do. A fire in a merchant's warehouse. You were 50 miles away. A noble's child falling from a tower. You weren't even on that continent. But the whispers say otherwise. You start changing your appearance even more radically. One week you're a limping friar. The next a mute woodsman with missing fingers. You dye your hair with crushed berries. You file a tooth down just to make your grin less memorable. You smear clay on your skin and pretend to be a leper. You learn to speak badly on purpose. Slurred vowels, broken grammar. no eye contact. And it works for a while, until the curses catch up. In a coastal village, you wake to find fish nailed to your door, dead, rotting heads pointed inward. The villagers are too afraid to confront you, but not afraid to threaten. You leave before sunrise. In a mountain pass, a group of children throw stones, not because they know who you are, but because they heard you're wrong. Bad luck. One touches your coat and screams. His mother weeps and spits. It doesn't matter what you do. The idea of you has grown teeth. Now and then you hear about others being accused of being you. One is beaten, another drowned. One poor man is hung upside down for 3 days before they let him go. You feel guilt, but only briefly, because the truth, you didn't start the lie. You just lived well enough to make it believable. Still, something inside shifts. You stop taking jobs, not because of conscience, but because the myth now poisons the work. Every death you cause is blamed on something more than you. Every clean escape feeds the idea that you're not human anymore. And if they believe that, they'll hunt you harder. So you fade deeper, into hills no one maps, into caves where bats outnumber men, into villages too poor to have stories. You live off roots and rain. You grow moss in your beard. You stop speaking for months at a time. You learn to talk to yourself without moving your mouth. And one day a child wanders into your clearing. She stares. You stare back. She asks if you're the ghost her father warned her about. You say nothing. She leaves you an apple and runs. You eat it and weep, not because of the kindness, but because she didn't scream. You've walked through cities so old, they forgot their own names, past temples strangled by ivy, and over roads paved by hands long turned to dust. But nothing prepares you for this place, Knossos. It rises like a riddle from the earth, half palace, half labyrinth, all legend. You reach it, near dusk wind tugging your cloak, the sea humming in the distance. The ruins sprawl across the hillside in fractured geometry, red columns leaning into broken archways, staircases descending into shadows that refuse to give up their secrets. You don't know why you came. Maybe you're following a whisper, a memory. Maybe you're just tired of running through places people forget. You wanted to come somewhere people remember. Knossos is remembered, or dreamed. Historians still argue whether it's the real palace of King Minos, or just the ghost of one. Whether it housed the Minotaur, or merely the bureaucrats of a vanished empire. You don't care. You're not here for truth. You're here for the feeling. And it delivers. You walk through the western courtyard, flagstones, slick with age, worn smooth by centuries of sandals and bare feet. There's a silence here, but not the usual kind. Not fear. It's reverence. Even the wind treads lightly. You touch the stone. It's warm, absurdly warm, as if it remembers the sun better than you ever could. And in that moment, you realize something: you're not alone. Not in the physical sense, though. Yes, a few tourists drift nearby, whisperings over pamphlets. But in a deeper way, this place carries the weight of everyone who ever walked it. Every priest, every dancer, every servant girl who traced this same hall and thought the same thing you're thinking now? What was it like before the ruin? You find yourself following a corridor, narrow, angled, leading downward, the famous labyrinth. Though no one agrees whether it truly existed or is just a poetic metaphor. Maybe both. The walls close in, cool, now damp. Your footsteps sound too loud. You half expect a beast to rise from the dark horns and hunger echoing centuries of fear. Instead, there's just a chamber, a fresco, faded but powerful, a bull leaping, limbs caught mid-motion, a dancer possibly male, possibly female, arching over the beast in flight. The colors still breathe even after millennia. You stare at it longer than you mean to. There's a story in it. One no scholar can fully translate. One no assassin can escape. The story of risk, of performance, of death and grace colliding in midair. You understand it better than you expected. The people here didn't kill from shadows. They danced with death in daylight. Their knives were for ritual. Their masks were for gods. And somehow it worked for a time. You wonder if they had names, those dancers. Or if, like you, they gave them up. You sit in the dust for a while. Your wounds feel distant here. Your curses quieter. No one knows you. No one wants to. You are, for once, not the most ancient thing in the room. You wander further. The Queen's Megaron, the grand staircase, the central court where they say 1,000 bodies once gathered in celebration or execution. Depends which scholar you ask. You find a broken seal in the dirt. Clay marked with a spiral. The labyrinth, a double-headed axe, the symbol of balance, destruction and creation. A tool, a weapon. You hold it until the sun begins to fade, and you realize you're not tired. Not in the usual way. Something about this place has reminded you that the world is older than your mistakes. That time makes myths out of murderers and monsters, out of misunderstood men. You watch the shadows lengthen across the ruins, and for the first time in years, you don't feel hunted. You feel small and strangely comforted. Because if this place survived, maybe something in you will too. You wake the next morning curled in the hollow of a broken column sun, rising slow over the Aegean. For a moment you forget who you are, not in fear, but in peace. You're just another figure in the ruins' limbs, tangled with time breath sinking with the wind that stirs the olive trees. Then you remember the paintings. They're everywhere in Knossos. Not grim saints or battle-worn martyrs, but scenes alive with movement. Dolphins mid-leap women with bare arms and jeweled belts. Men tumbling over bulls like they've made peace with gravity. It doesn't look like a world you came from. No blood, no blades, no ash. And you can't stop looking. The Minoans, they say, were different. They didn't build for war. No thick defensive walls, no moats or towers designed for archers. They built for beauty, for function, for light. Windows that catch the sea breeze just right. Open courts where dancers spun barefoot under the stars. Historians still debate what their society truly valued: matriarchy, religion, ritual, sport. The truth is blurry, half drowned in the same waves that once washed over these shores. But what's clear is, this they lived with intention, and that unnerves you more than any curse. Because your world, the one you've spent your life slipping through, is chaos cloaked in control. The Minoans. They embraced complexity without fear. Their buildings spiral, their art moves, their myths are mirrors. You trail a group of visitors through a long corridor, painted with sacred griffins. They chatter in languages you don't recognize. But one word comes up again and again: ritual. Everything here had purpose. Even the most delicate wall painting might hold divine meaning. Not just decoration devotion. You wonder what your own life would look like on a wall. A smear of red. A shadow leaning over a bed. A pair of eyes in the dark. What kind of god would that story serve? You leave the group behind and descend to the lower levels. Here the air is cooler, the light dimmer. You find the so-called lustral basins, sunken rooms with steps leading down to nowhere. Theories abound: purification baths, ceremonial spaces, royal dressing rooms. But standing in one now, ankle deep in dust, you can't shake the feeling that this was a place of transition, not for the body, for the self. A person entered here and came out changed. You sit on the edge, staring into that emptiness. You've had no temples, no rites, just blood and silence. And suddenly, you feel like something sacred has been missing all this time. Not redemption, no, that's too far gone, but meaning, ritual, the chance to acknowledge that change is happening even if no one sees it. You climb back up and trace your fingers over a cracked mural, a priestess maybe, or a dancer, her hands raised, her eyes painted with astonishing calm. You mimic her stance, arms, lifted palms open. The sun hits your skin like a benediction. No one laughs, no one sees, and for a second you believe this posture matters. There's a small museum near the site. Glass cases holding what the earth returned. Snake figurines, polished cups, carved rings. Tools and jewelry, everyday things made divine by time. You linger by one object in particular, a rhyton shaped like a bull's head. The horns long gone, but the craftsmanship undeniable. You stare into the hollow eyes. Not fearsome, not gentle, just watching. Were they hunters? Were they dreamers? Did they kill like you? Or did they find other ways to move the world? You leave the museum in silence, back through the gate, across the dusty road, down toward the shore where the sea waits. You sit on a rock, knees tucked, staring out at the horizon, and something shifts, not dramatically, not with fireworks or epiphany, just a soft tilt in your chest, a thought that maybe you've spent so long surviving that you forgot how to be. The Minoans left no record of their own destruction. Their writing linear A is still undeciphered. Their downfall still debated. Earthquakes, invasion volcano, or just time doing what it always does, but their spirit remains in the curves of their corridors, in the color of their walls, in the balance they built between function and beauty. You rise and dust your cloak, and you decide not everything has to be a job. Not every action has to serve the next escape. For now you will stay. Not long, but long enough to feel something that isn't fear. Long enough to remember that life once moved to rhythm, not survival. You don't expect to hear English in Knossos, but there it is, crisp-clipped, echoing through the ruins like a foreign wind. A man in a wide hat, long coat dusted with travel notebook in hand. He leans over a column stump and speaks to no one in particular. It's older than we thought. Much older. You watch from a shaded archway unnoticed. You've become good at this, observing, weighing, disappearing. He's joined by others' assistants with measuring ropes, crates of brushes and picks, archaeologists, scholars, the sort who read the bones of the earth like scripture. But this man, he commands attention, not with volume, but with certainty. Arthur Evans. You've heard the name, though, only vaguely. Something about ancient scripts, myths reborn. He walks these ruins like a man uncovering not just stone, but a dream that's been waiting for him. You drift closer. He speaks of Minoans, a name he's assigned to this vanished people, reviving the old legend of King Minos and his maze. He talks of bull leaping, of priest kings, of a civilization so advanced it must have bordered on the divine. And for a moment you're jealous, not of his fame, but of his belief. Because while you've spent years doubting everything, names, clients, truth, Evans believes in the power of the past, not just as study, but as meaning, as purpose. He points to the layered walls. See, here, he says, the architecture folds into itself. Rooms within rooms. It's not just design, it's ritual logic. A reflection of the labyrinth, but also the mind. And you wonder, was that ever true for you? Did your life fold inward too? Ritual layered over memory, lies built on silence, a labyrinth of choices. You understand this structure better than you thought. Later, you watch him unveil a fresco reconstructed, yes, but vibrant. Blue monkey's playful alien. He smiles like he's found a piece of heaven. But not all are convinced. You hear arguments, other voices muttering, doubting. Too much reconstruction, one says. Is this archaeology or theater? Historians still argue about Evans, whether he revealed the truth or reshaped it. Whether his vision of Knossos is fact or fantasy painted in vivid pigments. But you see both. The man who wants to illuminate the past, and the man who may have colored it too brightly. Still, you can't help admiring his dedication. He's not trying to vanish like you. He's trying to remember, and maybe that's what draws you to him. He's building a story from fragments, while you've spent your life shattering your own. You return to the palace in the evening, slipping through where the tourists don't go. The reconstructed sections glow orange in the fading light. The red columns. The reconstructed throne room. The horns of consecration rising against the sky like forgotten gods. You find Evans again, this time alone, sketching quietly. You consider revealing yourself. Just a question, just a voice. What do you really think happened here? But you don't, because questions invite attention, and attention invites memory. Instead, you leave him something. A scrap of paper, folded and wedged between stones near the grand staircase. On it, a single sentence. What if the labyrinth was a man? You don't stay to see if he finds it. You vanish again, always. But that night, as you sleep among the ruins, you dream not of death, but of corridors opening, of rooms full of light, of names spoken without fear, of someone someday stepping into your story and believing it might be worth remembering. You dream of being found, not captured, understood. And when you wake, the sun is rising behind the horns of Knossos, and the dream stays with you. It begins as a shape, a simple spiral. Or is it a square with endless corners? The labyrinth etched into stone, carved into pottery, scrawled onto the edge of a crumbling column. You see it everywhere in Knossos, and soon you start to feel it in your bones. You used to think of the maze as a trap, a puzzle designed to confuse, something you escape from. But here under the Cretan sun, walking through corridors that loop back and fold, and you realize it's more than that. It's not just about getting lost. It's about being led somewhere deeper. The Minoans didn't fear the maze, they revered it. You find its symbol near the ceremonial rooms, near basins, shaped like teardrops, near frescoes where bulls leap skyward as if freed from earth. This wasn't prison. This was passage, a transformation in stone. You sit by one carving for hours, tracing its grooves, a spiral inward and inward until it stops, not in chaos, but at the center, the heart, the place where something changes. Historians still debate what the labyrinth meant to the Minoans. Was it a myth made real, a metaphor for the soul? A memory of an actual building or a sacred pattern mapped onto their daily lives? You no longer care about definitions because you feel it. You who have walked corridors of power and pain. You who've moved through cities like smoke and been reborn in silence. Your entire life has been a maze, and maybe it wasn't to escape anything. Maybe it was to reach this moment. You begin mapping your memories onto the palace. That long hallway near the Queen's Megaron, that's the alley where you almost died at 16. The shaded vestibule with its painted griffins, that's the cellar where you first learned how long a man could bleed. The grand staircase split and winding. That's your path of names. Thomas, Elric, Ghost, Black Candle. Each turn in the labyrinth has been a life you shed, and the center you still don't know. You find more horns shaped like crescent moons, like rising flames. Horns of consecration, Evans called them. But to you, they're less about gods and more about choice. Points between which something passes. A gate. The maze asks something of you: to enter, to trust, to change. You think back to every kill, every escape, every moment you thought you were just surviving. What if you were navigating, not blindly, but along a path you couldn't yet see? The thought unsettles you because it suggests purpose, and purpose is dangerous. You once believed that if you kept moving, you'd eventually leave yourself behind. That by shedding names and places and guilt, you'd become clean, empty. But what if the maze doesn't cleanse? What if it collects Every turn, every mistake, every moment of mercy you almost gave, it holds them, not to punish, not to trap, but to shape you. You sit by the central court again as dusk falls. Children run where kings once walked. A cat winds through columns tail high, utterly at home. And you close your eyes. And you remember the girl with the apple. You remember the candle you lit for Corvin. You remember the question you left for Evans. And you realize this is the center, not a place, a moment. You're not running anymore, not hiding. You're listening, not to threats, but to what's beneath the silence. The labyrinth was never meant to keep people out. It was meant to keep something precious in. You look at your hands, scarred, steady, human. The world will go on telling stories about you, making you a beast, a demon, a whisper in the dark. Let them. You know who you are now. You stand. You walk through the corridors one last time, not as a shadow, but as a man. And when you exit, it's not an escape. It's a return. The center came with you. You stand on the ridge above Knossos. Wind tugging gently at your cloak, sea stretching forever to the south. Below the ruins, glow in the afternoon light, ancient stone made soft by time, its jagged edges worn down into something almost tender. You watch for a long while, and for the first time in your life, you feel something strange. Not fear, not urgency. Stillness, the kind that comes when you've reached the farthest corridor, the final turn, the place where the maze doesn't confuse you anymore, but reveals you. Because this whole time, you thought you were escaping the center, avoiding the truth. But now you realize the center has always been you. Every decision, every death, every disguise, concentric rings drawn around a truth too quiet to speak aloud. You were never meant to be a monster. You became one because the world demanded it. And now at the end of all paths, you see the difference. Monsters take without thought. Myths move without doubt. But you made choices. And that means you can make one more. You could disappear. Truly vanish. Take a ship's slip into some distant land, die as someone else entirely. No one would know. No one would follow. But the center of the maze doesn't let you leave unchanged. You decide to stay, not forever, just long enough to leave something behind. A carving. Just a small spiral etched beneath the threshold of a broken doorway. It won't mean much to anyone. Most will never see it, but someone might. A child, a traveler, another ghost like you looking for a reason to believe in direction, and they'll see it, and they'll know someone was here. Someone walked the dark and left a mark, not in blood, but in understanding. You find a quiet room, one with a view of the sea. The stones are warm beneath your palms. You sit. You breathe. You rest. For the first time in years, because the truth is the maze never needed to be escaped. It only needed to be seen clearly. And now you have. And now, as the last rays of sunlight slip behind the Cretan hills, the ruins exhale one long, quiet breath, and so do you. The night arrives not with fear, but with softness. Cool air brushes your face. Olive branches sway. The world hushes itself. You're safe here. Not just from danger, but from memory. The maze no longer turns beneath your feet. It's settled, quiet, and in its silence you finally find space to breathe. Let your thoughts drift now gently. Let the echoes fade. The footsteps, the voices, the distant clash of survival. They're behind you. All that's left is the sound of your heartbeat syncing with the ancient earth. You've walked far, hid well, hurt and healed in equal measure. And through it all you remain human, even in the shadows, especially there. So close your eyes now, let the story go. And know that some mazes aren't meant to trap you, they're meant to hold you while you grow. Sleep easy, ghost. You've found your center,